Good morning. Kell here this morning, and I'm so happy to be with you all again. I love my One World family, and it's always a pleasure and an honor to spend time with everybody. And it's especially a pleasure to hear the great music that we are treated to each week. Thank you, Asha and the One World Band, for presenting their music once again. Last week, Reverend Melanie talked about moving into the second half of life with greater wisdom and depth. Today, I want to continue that theme and talk about how we can move into the second half of life with grace. When I started to think about offering a talk about aging, I realized that although I have definitely moved into the second half of my life, I've never really given it much thought. And by it, I mean the process of aging and what that really means. Like many older people, I don't want to be old. I resent being old, and being old sometimes makes me feel angry and, just fearful of what's going to happen next. So when the opportunity came around to give a talk about aging, I was happy to do it. But I was also apprehensive about how to talk honestly about old age without being a total grumpy pants. How does a person age gracefully, I wondered. How do we age gracefully and lovingly while surrendering to old age and life's inevitable ending? I started by doing a little research about aging, and along the way, I came across an interview with Dr. Isabella Bick, who at that time was an 81-year-old practicing psychotherapist, who said that acceptance of aging is necessary for growth. But she said it's not a resigned acceptance, it's an embracing acceptance. So here was a woman, 81 years old, talking about still growing and even more amazing, calmly accepting of the actuality of aging, the real nitty-gritty of what happens when we get older. I thought about how could she be so old and still be so happy? I don't know if you've noticed, but generally speaking, a lot of older people tend to act in one of two ways. Some seem to be bitter, angry at both people who are not old and at the world for dismissing them from where they think the action is and where they should be in it. These seniors demand that they are catered to by the rest of the world. They want to be special, and they want us to accept their bad temper. They are the ones I believe Oscar Wilde was talking about when he said, with age comes wisdom, but sometimes age comes alone. Those who age with wisdom, on the other hand, seem to be more serene. These wise elders show us what it means to grow old gracefully. By attitude and example, they teach us how to go on growing more and more into our true selves as we age. They are the women and men who wear smiles on their faces. They see with wider eyes. They hear with more attention, speak with a more knowing assurance. These are people with soul. No matter their physical condition, they live with gusto and panache. They are funny, silly, and they don't ask permission. They defy the years of their lives and go into the sunset singing and dancing. They exude vigor and excitement with every new day, no matter how many days that may be. And I'm sure, like me, you can think of several of those types of people, those serene, wise elders who live among us right here in One World. This is not to say oldsters don't have their share of trials and troubles. As we grow old, we still have to face all the stumbling stones life shares with us, and the physical reality of aging cannot be forgotten or ignored. But the essential transformation that comes with age, no matter your physical condition, is a great deal more than physical well-being. It is the way we look at life. Sister Joan Chittister, author of The Gift of Years, Growing Older Gracefully, says age is the moment we come to terms with ourselves. We begin to look inside ourselves. We begin to find more strength in the spirit than in the flesh. Sister Joan, on whose thoughts and words this talk is based, tells us that in the second half of life, it's the time when we must begin to look inside our own hearts and souls, rather than outside ourselves for the answers to our problems. And although when often nothing can be done at this late stage to fix previous rifts or heal lingering wounds, the pain we feel can still be productive. This phase of the aging process is the last chance we have to be more than the sum of our early years, whatever mistakes we made, however much hurt we caused and received in turn. We can take off the masks we wear and finally face the darkness and suffering that we hid away. These are the years for spiritual reflection and spiritual renewal. We can come eye to eye with our own souls, admit who we are, and bring ourselves into the light and the fullness of our humanity. As we move into old age, we eventually reach a crossroad, the point in life where we make the kind of decisions that will determine the quality of our remaining years. This, the time when we determine how we want to express our personal place in a new environment. It defines our days and motivates us to continue moving forward. It's the time when we are free to be ourselves and free to explore deeper, richer, and more important things than we ever did before. We are free to see ourselves as unique, discovering that in many ways we are far more important now than at any time in our previous life. What we embrace and accept as aging is necessary for growth. As Dr. Vick counseled, we begin to see the world differently. We see that it is to be treasured, explored, enjoyed. We look at people differently too, as individuals, not as useful connections or problems to deal with, or as someone against whom we measure our own value. When we embrace and accept, we see life through new eyes, as something to value for itself. The blessing of these years is the transformation of the self to be in the second half of life, the self we were searching for in the first half, the very personification of life lived to the fullest. Life changes. In fact, the very essence of life is change. In Sister Joan's words, it is of the spiritual character of life to make demands, to bring new challenges, to goad us into living it. But that life changes is not the issue. Change is obvious. It will come whether we like it or not, whether we admit it or not, and whether we want it or not. The real issue is whether we are going to let life's changes destroy us. The attitude we carry into old age determines the spiritual depth with which we start this new phase. Do we choose to begin a new kind of life free of the strictures of the old, a life where we can be a gift to the world in some way? Or do we enter this period with a scowl on our face, full of bitterness, angry, dried up, and resisting the blessings being offered to us? Do we choose to be free, or do we choose to be less than what we are meant to be? Do we choose to continue to grow in new ways, making sense of what has gone before, and transforming ourselves into unique, whole, spiritual beings? No matter what our age today, it is time for all of us to let go of both our fantasies of eternal youth and our fears of getting older. Now is the time for the beauty of what it means to age gracefully, to understand that the last phase of life is not non-life, but rather a new stage of life. The older years when we are reasonably active, mentally alert, experienced and curious, socially important, and spiritually significant. These years are meant to be good years. Old age, a time of supposed disengagement, is exactly the moment when we become most important to the world around us. We are beyond the first half of life, the stage of being simply another replaceable part of life. We have entered the second half of life when we and everything we believe in or know about or understand cannot be replaced or undone. It can, however, continue to grow into a new phase of spiritual development, a phase that is meant to be more than simply an ongoing development of the self. Otherwise, as Sister Joan points out, how can we explain all this experience, all this insight we bring to the finish line? It cannot be for nothing. We cannot reach this point in our lives just for the emptiness of living out whatever days we have left. Old age has to be about something, about some form of service for our own sake and for the sake of the entire human community. But the service of elders is not a service of labor. It is the service of enlightenment, of the wise discernment of spirit. Our elders have lived through both the good and bad decisions of the past. They hold the memories of the world and the wisdom of ages. They are free enough and maybe even bold enough to tell the truth. Those who no longer have anything to lose, they are the ones who are speaking out. The wisest of our elders are the prophets of society, our moral compass, our truth tellers, and our storytellers. The Roman philosopher Seneca wrote, nothing is more dishonorable than the old, heavy with years, who have no other evidence of having lived long except age. Our role in our elder years is to be what we have discovered about life. Our understandings about life are unique. As elders, our responsibilities and our blessings are the things of the soul. The roles of thinker, philosopher, interrogator, arbitrator, wise women and men. The second half of life presents us with the opportunity to develop increased depth, integrity, and character. Or not. The choice is always ours. We can choose to give up on life, refuse to be more, or we can choose to enter old age with wisdom and grace. Personally, I choose to go as gracefully as I can and follow the advice of poet Robert Browning, who said, grow old along with me. The best is yet to be, the last of life for which the first was made. Thank you.